today's topic for editorial discussion is something special. So what this article deals with is that talks about India-France relationship. So recently India and France celebrated 25 years of strategic partnership, and all these things were happening, and our Honorable Prime Minister, he visited France for a 2-day meet, and a lot of agreements were signed there, and our armed forces took part in that parade, Postal Day parade that happened. A lot of agreements were signed. For example, this Horizon 2047 roadmap for the next 25 years of India-France relationship, and all these things were witnessed. And also our Prime Minister was vested with this highest French civilian honor, that is the Legion of Honor. The Red Cross Legion of Honor was given to our Honorable Prime Minister, and all these things were happening. And that is what this article deals with, talks about India and France's relationship. So getting into the relationship details about India and France, India, we have this concept called a strategic partnership, right? When it comes to international relationship, we have this concept called a strategic partnership, and India currently has strategic partnerships around with almost 30 countries, more than 30 strategic partners India has. So now what is this strategic partnership, or what quantify this strategic partnership? So when talking about strategic partnership, there are two questions that cannot be missed at all. First is the full spectrum of strategic partnership, and next is the test of time. Both these questions must be answered in order to find out if a country has strategic partnership with another country or not. So that is what these two questions are. The full spectrum of partnership means, there is a full spectrum means an entire, a wide gambit of areas of cooperation. There is critical technologies, there is defense, there is space, there is economic cooperation, there is international cooperations. Now all these things, the full spectrum of ambit, the full spectrum of cooperation. So that is what the first criteria to determine the strategic partnership of two countries. So yes, the second is that of test of time. Test of time in the sense there is a lot of trials and tribulations in between two countries when they start partnership, right? So if a country's relationship with another country stands the test of time through all these trials and tribulations, to all these international mixed waters, international hot waters, international clouds, headwinds, international headwinds, all these headwinds have been resolved, and the partnership has stood the test of time, then it can be called as a strategic partnership. So India and France, both partnership, their partnership is a strategic partnership because it covers the entire ambit. It covers a full spectrum of areas, such as it covers defense and space, economic cooperation, climate change, nuclear cooperation, international cooperation. It covers a wider gamut of activities of cooperation or areas of cooperation. So yes, and the test of time. Since 1998, a strategic partnership was established between India and France. Yes, earlier partnership was there, but a kind of strategic partnership was established in 1998, and 25 years we have witnessed a lot of trials and tribulations when it comes to India and France's relationship, and it has stood the test of time. And we are celebrating in this year 2020, we are celebrating the 25th year of India-France strategic partnership. So yes, India and France, they have a strategic partnership because they complete these two criteria. So yes, getting into the areas of cooperation. Now we'll see what are the areas of cooperation, what are the challenges that India and France relationship has. First, talking about the areas of cooperation, we have defense and space technology. So defense has always been a part of India's outreach. So yes, earlier India was heavily dependent on Russian made and Russian produced weaponries, Russian made defense system, everything, Russian made armed forces, aircrafts and helicopters and all these things. India was heavily dependent on Russia. But fast forwarding to today, or at least 5 to 6 years back, the thing is India has come to its own senses, and we are trying to diversify our defense sources. Thing is, we have outreach to various other players also. From heavily dependent on Russia, we are now slowly moving towards France, Israel, US, and all these things. We are trying to diversify our weaponry arsenal. So yes, that is a thing that has been done. And after diversification, we have moved into this concept called as indigenization or Atmanirbhar Bharat in the defense sector. That is self-producing or self-reliance in the defense sector. So these are the two ideals that India holds at most when it comes to the defense sector. Yes, and India and France, they have a very good defense sector relationship. The thing is, second largest in 2017 to 2021 period, France is the second largest like trading partner when it comes to defense technology. Yes, and India and France's relationship earlier, it was it had this stereotypical buyer-seller relationship. India goes to France, France sells them whatever they want. Recently also we have seen a lot of things like the Rafale aircrafts and all, right? So yes, this stereotypical buyer-seller relationship was followed earlier, but today a lot of things have changed. India and France's defense relationship has transitioned from the typical buyer-seller relationship towards joint implementation, towards co-development, towards technology transfer, and all these things have been happened. So recently also we have introduced this Scorpion class submarines, right? These are all like manufactured in India under Project 75I. These are all getting manufactured in India. So from this typical or stereotypical buyer-seller relationship, now we have transitioned into this co-development and joint implementation like programs and all. All these things have been witnessed, and we have recently bought this Rafale aircraft. A lot of other missile systems also are under play, and all these things are happening. And in times of military exercises, we have a lot of military exercises with France. For example, we have this Varuna which covers the naval exercise. We have this Shakti which covers the armed exercise, and we have this Garuda which covers the Air Force exercise, and all these exercises are there. And amongst this, there are also other exercises such as the Desert Knight, and all these things are there. So this is what the defense relationship between India and France is. And moving on to the space relationship, space technology. India and France's space relationship, it goes way back. And in fact, India was helped by France in setting up the Sriharikota Launch Center. Very base, right? Sriharikota. To set up that center, France has given a lot of inputs and a lot of aid for India, and that is one thing. And today, ISRO and CNES, that is the French Center for Space Studies, have indulged in joint working groups to increase collaborations. They have announced a joint Mars program, a joint Earth observation program, and all these things have been announced. And various payloads have also been sent from Indian satellites. Various French payloads, both public and private, have been sent from Indian launches, and all these things have happened. So this is how the defense and space relations of India and France is positioned upon. Moving on to the economic cooperation. So economic cooperation, yes, India and France, they have had a very good economic cooperation. In fact, the amount, it amounts to around 10 billion US dollars. India and France's bilateral trade amount, it amounts to around 10.1 billion US dollars. And India and France is the 11th largest FPI, a foreign investor in India. And all these things, it cites that we all know that how important France's economic cooperation is for India, and India's exports, they are cherished among the French people. Long for Indian exports, and all these things happen. So yes, that is how the economic cooperation is. And climate change. When it comes to climate change, yes, all other countries, especially the West, have been in very cordial relationship with the Indian subcontinent, and India in particular. So yes, and France is also no exception, and France has always supported India with technology and all these things. All emerging technologies have been helped by France, and all these things have happened. And India also supported France's Paris Agreement. France's Paris Agreement was supported by India, and both India and France together, they have bought this coalition called as the International Solar Alliance, right? We all know this International Solar Alliance that aims or that aspires to promote the usage of solar power. So that was jointly brought by France and India. So this is how the climate cooperation between, or environmental cooperation between India and France is. Now moving on to the nuclear cooperation. Nuclear cooperation, in the sense, it talks about the civil nuclear program. Civil nuclear program in the sense for the purpose of energy. not for the purpose of defense systems, but for the purpose of energy. So earlier in 1974 and 1998, what happened was India conducted a certain test. In 1998, we conducted this nuclear test, right? Yes. During that time, most of the Western partners of India, they imposed sanctions on India for conducting nuclear tests. They imposed sanctions on India and did not have economic cooperation, at least restricted economic cooperation. They did not give supplies of uranium and all these things. But France was an exception there. France, though from a Western country, Western part of Europe, it did not impose sanctions on India, and it regularly supplied uranium for India's nuclear power. So that is one thing that we must note when it comes to nuclear cooperation. And the thing is, yes, this Tarapur reactor is there, right? Tarapur plant. Its functionality is still based on France only. So earlier, for its functioning, we need uranium, and this uranium, while other Western players, they impose sanction on us, not giving us uranium and all. This France gave us a lot of uranium for usage. So this is the civil nuclear cooperation that talks about here. And Indo-Pacific, yes, Indo-Pacific as a region has a lot of ice glued to this region. And two major players of this region is India and France. Why India means it is a part, Indo-Pacific is part Indian Ocean, right? So Indo-Pacific, and France has a lot of small states here, La Réunion, French Polynesia, and all these countries, all these small states of France, they are all in this Indo-Pacific region only. So Indo-Pacific region has always been the topic of debate in EU, in France, in EU, in US, and India and China. So why is this Indo-Pacific so important? Indo-Pacific is so important, it becomes a geopolitical issue, it becomes a geo-economic issue. There is this Malacca Strait here, there is this Park Strait. Malacca Strait and all, it carries around 8% of world trade between the west and the east. So that is there. And Indo-Pacific, it has a geostrategic importance. It portrays a sense of dominance, who like a lot of other countries are eyeing to assert their dominance there. For example, China is trying to assert its dominance on Indo-Pacific, and all other countries like the Quad countries, France, and all these people have tried to oppose that. What they want is that a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, as opposed to an unopen and non-inclusive Indo-Pacific. So yes, this is what is happening right now. Indo-Pacific cooperation between India and France is at a much higher level, and recently trilateral agreements have also been signed between UAE, France, and India. Yes, this is what Indo-Pacific cooperation is. So now let's move into the challenges. What are the challenges that France and India's relationship have? The first challenge to be noted here is trade imbalances. We all know that India, yes, it imports a lot of France's products, and it does not match with India's exports to France. India's exports from France is more than India's exports to France, and this has created a trade imbalance between the two countries. And India is constantly trying to boost her imports to France. So this is one thing that is been occurring every year, trying to boost exports to France, and especially other Western countries, and all exports in general. And yes, the next challenge is that the IPR regime. The IPR regime is that intellectual property regime. So India's IPR has been subject to constant criticism from the West, and France is also no exception. France also criticizes India's IPR program, India's IPR regime. The thing is, they criticize it as not being exhaustive. It has a lot of restrictions. What they criticize is that it kills innovation, it kills invention. All these things are being criticized on IPR regime, and France also criticizes India on her IPR program. So there is also FTA issues in the sense free trade agreement. Yes, we are negotiating for a free trade agreement between the EU and EU, and the thing is, there is no particular agreement with that of France. So this again hampers economic cooperation. Yes, we have seen that there has been a lot of economic cooperation between the two countries, but the lack of FTA, yes, it has its own disadvantages, it has its own demerits. The thing is, without FTA itself, they are having a lot of economic cooperation, but just imagine what we can do with dedicated FTA, India can impose booster exports and France can grow from all these things. Yes, all these things can happen. The next issue is the rise of China. Rise of China, yes, as we have seen, Indo-Pacific being one of the strategic spots for both China, India and all other countries. They have glued their eyes to this region, and the rise of China in this Indo-Pacific region has been a threat to both these countries. Has been not a threat, I won't call it a threat, but yes, it is a cause for concern for both these countries. India, yes, India has been fighting a two-front war, Pakistan and China. China being one of the largest players when it comes to India's boundary conflicts and all. The increased Chinese presence in the Indo-Pacific also warns or is also a cause for concern for France also, and both these countries in cooperation with other countries that aspire for an open Indo-Pacific can help to counterbalance this rise of China, and this is a major challenge when it comes to Indo-France relationships. The thing is, yes, we have seen about the areas of cooperation, what strategic partner is, and what are the challenges that India and France have. Yes, thank you.